Chapter 77 to 78. Goten stood before the time machine, addressing the group of survivors gathered behind him. Okay, the time machine can take up to 4 or 5 people at a time, so everyone must be picked up in batches. It will be your responsibility, Trunks. But because we have other things to do, we must be sent there first. Goten surveyed the dozens of people behind Trunks. If only Kai could travel through timelines. Unfortunately, it didn't work that way, so everyone had to be picked up in batches. All right, Goten, Trunks nodded quickly. It was a blessing that everyone had survived. As for returning to the past timeline a few days earlier or later, no one would care. The first ones to go back were Goten, Krillin, Trunks, and Mai. Back at the Capsule Corp, Bulma was ecstatic when she heard that Trunks could live in this timeline. The Trunks of this timeline had died 8 years ago, and she had only seen him for 1 day a month ago. After seeing him, she missed him even more. It would be a great thing if the Trunks in front of her could be by her side. TN. Sorry, little Trunks. Mama got new Trunks now. You can stay with Daddy in Otherworld. Subsequently, Bulma immersed herself in the study of time energy, and Trunks shuttled back and forth, picking up all the other survivors. Goten, are we going back to the Hakaishin God Realm now? After Zamasu's matter was resolved, Krillin asked. Krillin still wanted to return to the God Realm. Under Whis' training, his strength had improved significantly. Whis, an old monster who had lived for hundreds of millions of years, was a real deity-level figure, and his training methods yielded twice the result with half the effort. Yes, we will, Goten agreed. So many people traveling through timeline at the same time is actually a big deal. Beerus-sama must be told. Goten emphasized the importance of informing Beerus. Beerus despised those who lacked the respect he deserved. If Goten informed him, Beerus might not be too angry. However, if Beerus discovered it on his own, the situation might become less favorable. Before leaving, Goten returned to Mount Paozu to inform Chi-Chi and Videl that he was going to practice in the God Realm. After all, if he disappeared for too long, they would inevitably worry. Although reluctant, Chi-Chi agreed, knowing that Goten was Earth's hope. Only his strength could face any crisis. The matter of Hakaishin last time left her with lingering fears. If the next enemy was stronger and more ruthless than Beerus, the Earth would be in danger. After leaving Mount Paozu, Goten brought Krillin to the God Realm using Kai. Whis was not surprised that Goten was able to find the location of the God Realm and arrived there in an instant, because Goten used the Kai ability when he was fighting Beerus before. As an angel, it was naturally impossible for such things to escape his attention. Goten, what you're doing is too dangerous, Whis cautioned. You've brought people from another timeline to this timeline. Do you realize the devastating blow this approach may bring to our timeline? Whis already knew about Goten bringing the Trunks and other people over. Although unlikely, a parallel timeline had been born since Trunks appeared here. But in his eyes, the possibility of such consequences was extremely low because the strength of Trunks was really average in his eyes, but it was not impossible. TN. I know this doesn't make any sense. Just chalk it up to reincarnated Goten being a singularity, and no parallel timeline was made of this AU. I know, Goten replied solemnly, but the timeline Trunks and the others come from is now uninhabitable. Leaving them there would mean certain death. I'll explain this to Beerus-sama. In fact, the Trunks from the future timeline had always been a warrior that he liked and admired very much, and he couldn't bear to watch him suffer in a desperate world. Besides, this timeline lacked fighters. Whis sighed. I hope Beerus-sama will listen to your explanation. Originally, I wanted to train you as the next Hakaishin for the 7th universe, but now it seems you're not suitable for that position, Whis said sadly. He had harbored this idea before to train Goten as the new Hakaishin of the 7th universe, but now it seemed that Goten was still too kind. It was very difficult for such a person to be qualified for the position of Hakaishin. Maybe, Goten just smiled faintly. In fact, he had no desire for the position of Hakaishin. It wouldn't take long for his strength to completely surpass the level of Hakaishin. At that time, it would be just a false title, and he wouldn't care at all. Although Hakaishin was really strong at this stage, it could even be said to be the highest existence, but Goten was very clear that there were many people stronger than Hakaishin in this world. The angel in front of him had strength far surpassing that of Hakaishin. And beyond the angel, there were the Grand Priest, Zeno's guards, and Zeno himself. Powerhouses capable of obliterating entire universes on a mere whim. And above Zeno, he didn't know if there was any more outrageous existence. "Okay, let's continue training," Whis declared, glancing at Goten's determined expression. He didn't want to waste time on this matter either, especially since angels were neutral observers. Despite Whis's status being higher than a Hakaishin, he couldn't intervene in this particular situation. All decisions rested with Beerus. Goten and Krillin resumed their training. In this way, time went by day. Trunks went back and forth more than a dozen times, and finally took all the survivors to this timeline. After seeing their long-lost home, everyone also burst into tears. On the 8th day, Beerus stirred from his slumber. The impending match against the 6th universe loomed, and he couldn't afford to oversleep this time. "Hooah!" Beerus stretched and walked out of his temple and found Whis sparring with Goten and Krillin. Their battle raged on, but neither could land a blow on the angel. Whis's normal state was akin to the perfect Ultra Instinct form, rendering him untouchable. Goten, despite his newfound power rivaling some Hakaishin, remained insignificant before Whis. After training for a few minutes, the three stopped fighting. Because their sparring had lasted for a full 6 hours, Goten was already sweating profusely. However, Krillin, who was an android with infinite energy, showed no signs of fatigue. "Still can't grasp Ultra Instinct." After the fight stopped, Krillin muttered to himself, "But thanks to Whis's training, my strength has improved significantly." It seemed that with his talent, he really couldn't comprehend Ultra Instinct. To tap into that kind of divine realm, for him, it was really too unfathomable. In the battle with Whis, Goten seemed to understand Ultra Instinct more and more exquisitely. Because he had mastered the Ultra Instinct sign, therefore, his understanding of Ultra Instinct was much deeper than that of ordinary people. "Hey! Beerus-sama has woken up. I thought he'd oversleep again this time," Whis exclaimed while looking up at Beerus, who was watching the battle. Beerus woke up after a mere 400 tacks, equivalent to 8 Earth days, a departure from his usual 50-year naps, which was really unexpected. Clearly, the upcoming 6th universe match mattered to Beerus. His pride and rivalry with Champa were at stake. Beerus jumped up and appeared in front of Goten and the others. "Whis, how are these two progressing?" Beerus asked, intrigued. "Beerus-sama, both of them have trained very well, and their perseverance is also very firm. Krillin's strength has improved significantly," Whis replied. "As for Goten, the improvement is even greater. He is now infinitely close to the perfect Ultra Instinct." He had to admit that Goten's training speed was really amazing. In just a few days, he had gone from an imperfect Ultra Instinct to a nearly perfect Ultra Instinct. This kind of powerful comprehension ability, even if it was the 12 gods of destruction, he was afraid that it was beyond their reach. "Ho! That's really good." Although Beerus was very calm on the surface, internally he was astonished. Goten's strength had grown exponentially. A month ago, he wielded a mere fraction of his current power. And now, in just a month, he managed to nearly master the perfect Ultra Instinct state. If he was given a period of time to grow, maybe his strength would surpass his own. A mortal could surpass a Hakaishin. This was something he had never thought of before. "Beerus-sama, Goten seems to have something to tell you," Whis interjected and glanced at Goten, referring to the Trunks incident. Although Goten said before that he would explain it to Beerus, but as an angel it was still his duty to remind Beerus after this kind of thing happened. "Oh? What's the matter? Tell me." Beerus looked at Goten and asked. "All right. Beerus-sama, it's like this." For a minute, Goten told Beerus roughly what happened in the future. Then how he went himself with Trunks to the future, and they came back. He told Beerus the whole truth. "What? Boy, do you know that traveling through timeline at will is a felony? And you brought so many people here in this timeline, it seems that you don't take my position seriously at all." Beerus was taken aback for a moment, then an angry expression appeared on his face. Although he usually doesn't pay attention to what happens in the universe, but traveling through timelines was expressly forbidden by Zeno. "Beerus-sama, this incident was caused by a deity's actions. This would not have happened if Kaioshin apprentice Zamasu from the 10th universe hadn't wantonly destroyed the planet where mortals live. Besides, if I remember correctly, Kaioshins have no right to destroy planets." Goten also said with a serious face. This matter was indeed a god's fault. "You're right. Kaioshin don't have the right to destroy planets. He's just a trainee Kaioshin. How dare he do such a thing? And in the future timeline, he actually killed all the Kaioshin and Hakaishin." Beerus clenched his fists tightly, obviously very angry, because according to what Goten said just now, the Kaioshin apprentice from the 10th universe, Zamasu, not only laid waste to the mortal civilization planets, but also slaughtered countless mortals, and actually dared to kill all the Kaioshin, letting the Hakaishin to also die. More importantly, he dared to kill him. This was an absolutely unforgivable thing. Besides, Beerus-sama, for our match against the 6th universe this time, apart from me and Krillin, the number of the other 3 contestants has not yet been determined. Goten continued to speak. "It will be difficult to find stronger fighters for a while. Trunks is very strong and can just represent our 7th universe in the battle. He did not mention Majin Buu to create pressure on Beerus, as there were not many warriors in the 7th universe, and now there were only 2 days left before the contest against the 6th universe. There were still 3 players who had not been finalized, and it would make Beerus anxious." "Is that so, Whis?" Beerus froze for a moment, then asked Whis quickly. Although traveling through time was a felony, but in his opinion, it was not as important as the contest against Champa. If the contest was lost to the 6th universe, that fat pig would definitely use this matter to mock him for a long time. "Yes, Beerus-sama." Whis could only nod his head. There were indeed not many fighters in the 7th universe. Otherwise, a few decades ago, such a small fry like Frieza would not have been called the Emperor of the Universe. "Damn!" Beerus frowned slightly. They were still short of 3 contestants. At this moment, he didn't know how to find them. Scratching his head, Beerus seemed to have a very good idea. Then he said to Goten with a serious face and said, "Goten, traveling through time is indeed a felony. It stands to reason that with your actions like this, I will have to destroy you. But now I give you a chance to make up for your mistakes. As long as you find all 5 contestants in the next 2 days and then successfully win the match against the 6th universe, I can handle the matter of your traveling through time. Of course, besides that, you have to prepare me the best food on Earth." After finishing speaking, he was still a little nervous and glanced at Goten. He was afraid that this guy would refuse. Would he really have to destroy Goten by then? This guy was a rare genius. He hadn't met anyone like him before. And he was a very good opponent. If he destroyed him, he would have no one to spart with if he wanted to fight in the future. "Okay, I promise you." Goten nodded without hesitation. He knew that Beerus was giving him a way out. And he also didn't have any idea on how to select the other 3 fighters. But to Goten, it really didn't matter, because as long as he was there, he would not lose the contest against the 6th universe. "Good! Now follow me to the 10th universe." That mere trainee Kaioshin dared to do such a thing. I will destroy him. Beerus really wanted to teach a lesson to that overconfident trainee Kaioshin from 10th Universe. He was just a trainee Kaioshin, yet he dared to cause wanton destruction, even dared to kill other gods. This kind of thing was absolutely unforgivable, although the mess wasn't made by Zamasu from this timeline, but he also posed such dangers. If Beerus let him live, maybe he would also walk down the same path. This guy's ideals were too dangerous. More importantly, that guy was too devious. He actually killed all the gods in the multiverse so that there would be no one who would interfere in his plans. This threat must be completely wiped out in the cradle. Whis, hurry up and take us to the 10th universe. Beerus gave an order to Whis. Okay, Beerus-sama. Whis nodded quickly. It seemed that after going to the 10th universe, some clashes were bound to happen. He hoped that they wouldn't meet Rumshi, the Hakaishin of the 10th universe, because the relation between Rumshi and Beerus wasn't amicable. If the two of them met, it would not be a good thing. The distance between the two universes was immense, particularly when they were not adjacent. It would take around 3 or 4 hours for all 4 of them to travel to the 10th universe, in the Kaioshin god realm of the 10th universe. At this time, Zamasu was making tea for Kaioshin Gowasu. Zamasu, your tea-making skills seem to have regressed. Since the last time you went to planet Babari, your concentration seems to be much worse than before. With your current mentality, you won't be able to hold the position of Kaioshin. Gowasu gazed at the murky tea before him, speaking to Zamasu with solemnity. Zamasu was his most esteemed disciple, possessing exceptional talent. His comprehension ability surpassed that of his peers, distinguishing him as a top candidate for Kaioshin. He had once been exemplary. Even the tea he brewed was clear as crystal. However, since his last visit to planet Babari, Zamasu's mentality seemed to have changed. The tea he brewed was no longer crystal clear. Whenever mortal issues were discussed, he grew impatient and even argued with himself. His significant prejudice against mortals became increasingly apparent. This was not the mindset befitting a Kaioshin, so Gowasu was deeply concerned about Zamasu's mental state. I understand, Gowasu-sama. I will keep this in mind. Zamasu nodded. A sinister gleam flashed in his eyes, but he kept his respectful attitude towards Gowasu. His recent visit to planet Babari had deeply disturbed him. Witnessing those creatures' selfishness and brutality had filled him with disgust. He couldn't fathom how such creatures, driven by selfishness and ignorance, could be allowed to inhabit such a beautiful world. To Zamasu, their mere existence tainted the once beautiful universe. The idea of ridding the universe of those foolish and selfish creatures had taken root in Zamasu's heart. He believed that only by eliminating them could the universe reclaim its original beauty. A grand plan was slowly taking shape in his mind. To him, the presence of such beings was seen as a testament to the gods' failure. As it was a failure of the gods, Zamasu felt it was his duty to rectify it by eradicating those creatures, to thoroughly cleanse this world defiled by those filthy creatures. Zamasu, please remember that as Kaioshin, our duty is to uphold peace and stability in this universe and guide its inhabitants towards a brighter future. Gowasu took a sip of tea, then immediately spat it out and spoke to Zamasu with sincerity. Zamasu was his most esteemed disciple, and he didn't want him to stray from the path. For deviating from it would only lead to one outcome, complete destruction by Rumshi. With all due respect, Gowasu-sama, Zamasu began. The creatures we encountered on planet Babari were utterly selfish and foolish. If we truly seek to restore the beauty of this universe, we need only eradicate those foolish beings completely. Zamasu bowed his head, concealing a fierce aura of hostility in his gaze. He believed that verbal teachings alone couldn't reform those foolish creatures. The most efficient solution, he concluded, was their complete eradication, paving the way for the creation of a pristine and beautiful world. Upon hearing this, Gowasu's demeanor abruptly shifted, a tinge of anger seeping through. "Zamasu," he thundered, "it appears you've disregarded my teachings entirely. I've reminded you countless times that planet destruction falls under the jurisdiction of Hakaishin, not Kaioshin. If you persist with this mindset," Gowasu continued sternly, "I'll have no choice but to reluctantly replace you." It was evident that Zamasu's mentality had become a significant concern, one that if left unchecked could lead to disastrous consequences. Upon hearing Gowasu's threat, Zamasu cast a disdainful glance at his master's back, his eyes brimming with unbridled malice. To Zamasu, these Kaioshin were nothing but foolish and obstinate. Their incompetence had allowed mortals to thrive unchecked, resulting in the pollution of countless planets with greed and selfishness. Ultimately, it was the cowardice of these failed gods that had led to such dire consequences. "Yes, I understand, Gowasu-sama," Zamasu replied, his nod swift despite the simmering killing intent in his gaze. Before ascending to true Kaioshin status, he had no power to enact change. In his mind, there was no place for these cowardly gods in his vision for the universe. In that moment, a radical plan took shape in Zamasu's mind. A plan that inevitably involved sacrificing his master Gowasu. Whizzing! Suddenly, several cracking sounds pierced the air, causing both Gowasu and Zamasu to snap their heads upwards. 4 figures materialized before them. "Beerus-sama?" Gowasu exclaimed in surprise, his expression mirroring his astonishment. For standing before them was none other than Hakaishin Beerus of the 7th universe. Yet Gowasu couldn't comprehend why Beerus, the Hakaishin of the 7th universe, would appear in the Kaioshin god realm of the 10th universe. Such an occurrence hadn't transpired for as long as he could remember. As he turned his gaze towards the 2 figures behind him, Gowasu noted that they appeared to be mortals. What could have prompted mortals to accompany Beerus to the Kaioshin god realm? Zamasu's eyes blazed with intensified hatred and killing intent upon seeing Goten and Krillin. How dare these filthy mortals defile the sacred grounds of the god realm? However, he dared not voice his disdain at the moment, knowing full well the consequences of offending the Hakaishin. "Beerus-sama, do you have any business in the Kaioshin god realm of our 10th universe?" Gowasu inquired respectfully after his initial surprise. Despite the presence of individuals from another universe, reverence for the Hakaishin compelled him to maintain a demeanor of utmost deference. "I'm here for him," Beerus pointed calmly at Zamasu. "Him? For Zamasu? Why?" Gowasu looked puzzled. Zamasu was just a Kaioshin candidate from the 10th universe. There shouldn't have been any conflict between him and Beerus. In fact, they had never even met before. But why did Beerus come to the 10th universe to find Zamasu? Because this guy in another timeline, he slaughtered mortals wantonly and destroyed planets. In some other future, this guy killed all the Kaioshin and Hakaishin, Beerus explained. And hundreds of millions of souls died at his hands, Beerus added indifferently. Others have nothing to do with me. But it is absolutely unforgivable that this guy dared to make a move on me. It was clear that as Beerus spoke, Zamasu's fate had been sealed. How is this possible? Gowasu exclaimed in disbelief. Zamasu has always been by my side and never left. It is absolutely impossible for him to travel to some future time and kill Kaioshin and Hakaishin. Gowasu immediately rushed to defend Zamasu. Despite noticing issues with Zamasu's mentality lately, particularly his intense hatred for mortals, he had always remained by Gowasu's side. There was simply no opportunity for him to commit the acts Beerus described. Zamasu from another timeline did it, Beerus declared firmly, but such a threat must be extinguished before it can grow any further. Also, you old guy, Beerus continued, turning his attention to Gowasu, when you choose your heir next time, can you open your eyes? After his words, Beerus stretched out his right hand dominantly, aiming it at Zamasu. Beerus-sama, please show mercy, Zamasu pleaded, looking terrified and confused. I haven't done anything at all. Why must you do this to me? Despite his previous thoughts of wanting to destroy all mortals and questioning the existence of weak and incompetent gods, Zamasu insisted that these were only thoughts, with no actions taken. He didn't even know where to begin with such a plan. Being killed like this would be incredibly unjust. Yes, Beerus-sama, Gowasu interjected quickly. Zamasu hasn't done anything yet, and what happened in the future timeline you mentioned has nothing to do with Zamasu now. As Beerus prepared to strike, Gowasu couldn't bear to see his beloved disciple face such a fate at the hands of the Hakaishin. Stupid old bastard, Beerus muttered coldly. Do you want me to wait until he kills everyone? Sorry, I don't have that kind of patience, Beerus retorted. Despite Zamasu being a trainee Kaioshin from the 10th universe, his death wouldn't affect Beerus in any way. Even if Rumshi was present, Zamasu's demise was inevitable. Hakai. In the next moment, an indifferent voice emanated from Beerus's throat. Ah! With a piercing scream, Zamasu's body disintegrated into a purple speck of light, vanishing without a trace. A threat like this poisonous snake had to be eradicated at the earliest opportunity. Zamasu! Gowasu exclaimed in anger and frustration, but he knew there was nothing he could do against a Hakaishin. Let's go! With a disdainful snort, Beerus turned to depart after effortlessly destroying Zamasu. He felt somewhat relieved compared to before. Just as they were preparing to depart, a voice suddenly echoed from behind. Bastard Beerus, do you think you can leave my universe so easily after taking a life? The voice was assertive and filled with anger. Both Goten and Beerus swiftly turned around to see Hakaishin Rumshi and Angel Kuss from the 10th universe. Beerus, you're too arrogant! Rumshi's voice cut through the tension. How dare you kill the Kaioshin candidate of the 10th universe in our territory? Rumshi's cold stare bore into Beerus, his disdain palpable. Among the 12 Hakaishin, Beerus was the one he despised the most. Beerus's audacity in directly taking a life in the 10th universe was something he couldn't tolerate. Humph! So what? Beerus retorted boldly. This guy killed all the Kaioshin and Hakaishin in the future. If Zeno-sama and Daishinkan-sama hear about this, you'll be done for. Beerus spoke coldly, showing no signs of fear. He had a strained relationship with all the Hakaishin, so there was no need for him to show deference to Rumshi. That's just your version of events, Rumshi retorted sharply. Since you took a life in the 10th universe, you must pay the price. The two mortals with you. Are they your apprentices? Then Zamasu's life will be repaid by the two of them. Rumshi's gaze locked onto Goten and Krillin instantly. In truth, he cared little for a Kaioshin candidate's life. They could easily find a replacement. But Beerus's audacity in killing someone within the 10th universe's Kaioshin realm was a direct affront to him as a Hakaishin. How could he tolerate such humiliation? Although Hakaishin couldn't fight each other or be killed, Rumshi saw an opportunity to strike back by targeting the two mortals who seemed to have a close relationship with Beerus. Yeah? Beerus scoffed in response to Rumshi's threat. Do you think you have the qualifications to kill people in front of me? Dismissing Rumshi's challenge with contempt, Beerus showed no fear. He believed himself to be superior to any other Hakaishin. If they were to fight one-on-one, none of them would stand a chance against him. Especially Rumshi, whose combat power was only marginally stronger than Fatty Shampa's. Beerus deemed him incapable of killing anyone in his presence. Without hesitation, Rumshi charged towards Beerus. Despite not being as powerful as Beerus, Rumshi was still incredibly strong. His bulky frame didn't hinder his speed. He moved like lightning. In moments, he was upon Beerus, launching himself into the air like a meteorite hurtling towards its target. Humph! Reckless fool, Beerus snorted coldly, meeting Rumshi's attack head-on with a powerful punch. Boom! The moment their punches collided, a massive shockwave rippled outwards, sending Kaioshin, Gowasu, and Krillin flying. Pawoo! Rumshi seized the opportunity, unleashing a deafening trumpet. It wasn't an ordinary roar, it was a special skill unique to Rumshi. This roar emitted a powerful energy attack, capable of temporarily paralyzing his opponent's motor nerves, rendering them unable to fight. The closer one was to Rumshi, the stronger the effect. Caught in the blast, Beerus found himself immobilized for a moment. Seizing the advantage, Rumshi turned his attention towards Goten and launched a punch. You think you can take advantage of me? Your wishful thinking ends now. Goten snarled defiantly, transforming into legendary Super Saiyan 2 in an instant. With a swift punch, he struck Rumshi head-on. Boom! Rumble! The moment the fists of the two collided, Rumshi's body was directly thrown back by the punch.